Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, as we will take a look at Joel Embiid is out tonight against the Wizards. How long is he out with that injury? Who knows? Day to day, they say. 7 foot, 280 pounds with a knee problem. I don't know if that's day to day. I don't know if they're just trying to put a positive spin on things, Mike. But when you hear meniscus, day to day, Sixers, Joel Embiid, I don't know if that's a positive feel for you. How about it?
No, those are not words you want to hear in the same sentence. And I remember, I did my playoff preview, about 10 days ago, and it was basically 5 questions that the Sixers had to answer if they were going to go and reach the NBA final or perhaps win a championship. And question number 1 was, is Joel Embiid going to be durable enough to withstand a deep playoff run? And we're 4 games in, and right now the answer is no. And as far as when we see him again, I take my attitude that I take with whenever a professional athlete is injured for any team. I don't really put a lot of stock in what the team says. I'll believe the athlete is playing again when I see him on the court. So I'll believe Joel Embiid is back when I see him on the court.
So without Joel Embiid, does this series get a little discomforting, or should they close this thing with or without Embiid tonight?
Absolutely not. I think the Sixers close out this series. No NBA team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. The Washington Wizards aren't going to be the first. Last I checked, Raul Neto is still on the Washington roster. As long as he's on the roster, the Sixers should be fine. They're going to figure out a way to win tonight. They played 21 games without Embiid. They went 10-11 in those 21 games. The Wizards are not a good team. I would expect the Sixers, especially with a day to prepare, right?
Yes.
A day to adjust to life without Embiid. I would expect the Sixers at home to close that series out tonight.
Let me, if you were picking right now, I mean, before you would say, all right, Embiid's the first guy that you would take. You would say Bradley Beal becomes the best player all of a sudden. Who's the next guy?
Boy, that's a tough question, because is it, with the way the first 3 games of the series went, you probably would have said Tobias Harris. But if you don't say Tobias Harris after game 4, then you're probably in a toss-up between Russell Westbrook and Ben Simmons, 2 guys that have a lot in common. Basically, Ben Simmons is a triple-double machine who won't shoot from the outside, and Russell Westbrook is a triple-double machine who can't shoot from the outside. So it's probably a toss-up there. But I think the 76ers just have too much depth overall, and the fact they're at home, they still have a problem with matching up against the Sixers' bigger players. I expect the Sixers to close out the series tonight. What happens in the future, however, now is certainly up for debate and is anybody's guess.
Yeah, now we'll get to that in a little bit. I know we all have eyes on that game here locally, but we also have eyes on that Hawks-Knicks series we'll get to. I want to definitely get your take, Mike, and I'm imagining I know where this might go, but I want to ask you anyway. How much was what happened the other night an issue for this Sixer team moving forward? When they lost that game the other night, did you say they lost that game because Ben Simmons went 50% from the line in the final, in those 3 trips?
Well, I think it was a contributing factor. You look at, for a professional sports team to blame a loss on one thing, it's difficult. Like a football team might lose a game 28-27, and the field goal kicker might miss a field goal that could give them the win. Did the field goal kicker lose the game by himself? No. Was he a big part of it? Yes. I think, unlike some people that kind of brush aside the Simmons missed 3 throws, I think they're important. I mean, in a close NBA game, he went 4 for 8 from the foul line in the final 3 minutes. They were definitely a major part, not only because of the misses, but also what it prevented the Sixers from doing, right? Instead of running a play, maybe exploiting a matchup that they saw out there, getting the other 4 guys involved, it was Ben Simmons shooting foul shots. So it was not only that he made 4 of 8, it was the fact that, him being fouled on purpose and sending him to the line, I think takes the entire team out of its rhythm. And he just did not make enough foul shots. I think there's a huge difference between being up 1 with the ball in the closing seconds of a game and being down 1 with the ball.
Well, that I agree with all that, and I would say, look, you got to make your free throws. There's no question in that spot. The difference is if he makes the free throws, instead of being down 2 at the 2-minute mark, they're up by 1. But realistically, it didn't cost them the game, but it could have changed some things. I agree with what you just said there. I'm kind of glad that we agree on that. The difference is I thought with 2 minutes left, because you can't foul him purposely after that, they didn't get enough stops. That's where I was disappointed. And I thought a bigger problem was I was really disappointed in Harris, who has been excellent this year. It was his time with Embiid out to have to step up, and I didn't think he did a good job of it.
Well, right. You look at Embiid getting hurt. You look at Tobias Harris going 8 for 24. You look at the defense maybe not being what it was in the first 3 games. But again, I come back to, 2 minutes to go, the Wizards up 1 rather than being down 2 or tied. I think that's a huge difference. I think it changes the way you manage the 24-second clock. It changes what you play. And also, I look at it as 3 possessions that the Sixers did not get a chance to. Maybe, who knows, maybe Tobias Harris exploits a matchup. Maybe Danny Green makes a 3. Maybe Seth Curry makes a play out of a pick and roll.
Yeah.
Those players did not get that opportunity because the other team is putting Simmons on the foul line. And I think that's just as important as to, the makes and misses of Ben Simmons.
You're absolutely right. But it goes like Doc tried to explain that, hey, 1 point per possession, we'll take that all the time. That comes into play if you're stopping the other team. The problem was you didn't get a stop on defense, because if the Sixers get a stop, you getting 1.3 times down the court. But you're right. In the end, it changed the flow of the game. But they still had 2 minutes to close that thing out, and they didn't get it done. That's what was disappointing, the whole situation. Now, do you think you'll see Washington use that strategy even more tonight? Will they start it at the 5-minute mark? Will they start it at the 4-minute mark?
I definitely think you're going to see it again, and I think it depends on how, what the score of the game is. They actually did it, I believe, the first time they did it was the second quarter, maybe the other night, and it's important for fans to remember, a lot of fans don't realize this, you can't do it within the last 2 minutes of not only the fourth quarter, but any quarter. If you foul a guy away from the ball, it's a free throw and the foul team retains possession. So 2 minutes to go in the first quarter, you just can't foul Ben Simmons inside of the 2-minute mark of any quarter. So it's important for people to remember that. But I definitely think you'll see it again, for all the reasons that we just outlined. And basically because it worked, right? They won the game, and, they're going to look at it as it works. So I think if they're down 10 in the third quarter with 5 minutes to go, why not?
Right. No, and that's what, so do they start it a little earlier this time? Now, Doc Rivers was asked by Kevin Kincaid, hey, did you think about taking him out? He said, that's idiotic, essentially. I'm not taking him out. That's your suggestion. I'll pass on that. Should he think about it?
Well, I disagreed. Obviously, Doc in the Monday night post-game presser was doing everything he could to protect Ben Simmons and praise his player and stand by his player, and I understand that. The one thing that Doc said I agree with is you can't take Ben Simmons out of the game. I think you're doing the Wizards a favor by taking him out of the game, so you have to play him. But this is like, Hyman Roth and The Godfather 2, right? This is the business we choose. This is the lineup the Sixers chose, right? All year long, they've told us Ben Simmons, Doc has said, I don't care if he doesn't shoot from the outside. I'm not worried about the foul shots. We scored 125 points. Who cares who scores? If Ben gets 0, he's still great. Okay, this is the player we've chosen. This is the lineup we've chosen. And if he doesn't make foul shots in key spots, you might lose, and you're going to have to live with that. But you can't take him out of the game. He does too many other things well. I'm in the Simmons doubter camp. You'd be doing – Scotty Brooks would be cartwheeling on the other sideline if Doc Rivers took Ben Simmons out of the game with 3 minutes to play.
Oh, man. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City looking at this game tonight. Let me ask you this then. If Embiid is out for a week, 2 weeks, are they good enough without Joel Embiid to beat Atlanta or New York?
You know what? I think they're good enough to beat the Knicks without Joel Embiid. The Atlanta Hawks, not the Atlanta Hawks I've seen play the last couple of days. I think the Hawks are a dangerous team. I think with Embiid, that was probably a series the Sixers would win in maybe 5 close games, or more likely I would have picked it to go 6. I think without Embiid, the Hawks are a problem. The Hawks have not only Trae Young, but they've got some length in John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella. They've got some rim protection there. Bogdanovich has added a lot. Nate McMillan is a good coach. I said they're 27-11. They finished the regular season with that. They're 3-1 so far in the playoffs. I think with Embiid, that was a 5-game series. That was where every game was, in doubt with 4 minutes to go. I probably would have picked Sixers in 6 without Embiid. Boy, I don't think the Sixers have enough to get past the Hawks.
Right. And I said that last night. I'm like, quite frankly, like this team was built around. I think what Brett Brown, one of the things that he didn't want to do was make it determinate on whose team this is. It's Joel's team or it's Ben's team. I think he wanted it to be both their teams. I think Doc has come in and said, Joel, this is your team. And with that, Ben, I'm not asking you to score, right? Don't worry about being a scorer. This is Joel's team. Now you take that off the table, and the team becomes very discombobulated, where Brett kind of tried to play both sides. When Joel went out, the team looked a lot better sometimes without Joel because it suited Ben's style more. Do you think that will suit Ben without Joel this time around?
Well, past history says the way they played this season, the answer would be no. And one of the frustrations with Ben Simmons, and I think D. Lineman asked a great question on the Doc Rivers post-game press conference Monday, is the question about Simmons is not only the shooting, but the question is, okay, when Embiid goes out and we need you to step up, we can't have games where you score 8. We need you to get 25. We need you to get 30. And Simmons, for the most part, I think there was one game this year where Embiid was out, where he went off. But for the most part, you get the same Ben Simmons without Embiid that you get with Embiid. And that's a problem. And I don't think that's going to be good enough to, probably not get past the Atlanta Hawks if that's the case. And I think, even the most ardent Sixer fan would say, attacking the Brooklyn Nets or the Milwaukee Bucks without Joel Embiid would be a problem.
No question about that. Now, what do you think? That series is now set. I don't know when it starts. I think it's over the weekend is when they're going to they start Saturday. Yeah, over the weekend. So they're starting that thing Saturday, 7:30. A lot of people think this is almost the finals, that these are the two best teams, Milwaukee and Brooklyn.
Well, I mean, I still think the Sixers are right there with a healthy Embiid, but depending on Embiid's health, it might be viewed as, the Eastern Conference semifinal. A lot of buzz about the Milwaukee Bucks and, of course, their sweep of the Miami Heat. But, Mike, I just keep watching the Brooklyn Nets, and, I watched them in the fourth quarter last night, and my jaw drops open with what they're able to do on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, it's they score about 15 points in 30 seconds sometimes.
Yeah, they put the foot on the gas last night.
I think right. I mean, in that fourth quarter, it went from being like 9 to 20 it seemed like 3 possessions basically. So, and I think the thing we're forgetting about is just how good Kevin Durant is. And I was thinking the other night, he's 7 foot tall and he's out drilling 30-footers from beyond the 3-point line. I mean, he's almost impossible to defend. I think we forget sometimes how good he is, and the fact that he might be, arguably, the best player in the world right now when he's completely healthy. So I still like the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to give them all they can handle with Giannis and Drew Holiday, but again, I just watch the Brooklyn Nets sometimes, and my mouth drops open to the floor with what they're able to do offensively.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Check out his must-win column at the pressofatlanticcity.com. Brad Stevens is going to be the new president of basketball operations. He is no longer the coach. I mean, this Celtics thing, it's interesting because the Sixers and Celtics were kind of on this parallel together. The Celtics had a lot of earlier success. Now it's kind of flipped. Stevens was this great coach. Now he's not coaching anymore. What a bizarre day in Boston.
Well, I'll disagree with you a little bit there. I think the Celtics are still way ahead of the Sixers. I mean, the Celtics have been to the playoffs 13 of the last 14 years. They won a title in 2008. They've been to the Eastern Conference Final 3 of the last 5 years. They swept the Sixers last August. So if the Sixers had maybe done something in this playoffs, which they still can do, maybe that would move them ahead of the Celtics. I just think it's a natural sort of break for the Celtics to make a management change, right? Obviously, they've got to take a step back a little bit. They have 2 great young players in Tatum and Jaylen Brown to build around. Danny Ainge is 62. He's been there 18 years. I think he had a heart attack in 2019. So it's probably maybe time for Ainge to sort of hand the reins over. And, Brad Stevens, I'm a big Brad Stevens guy. I know he's unproven as an NBA executive, but here's a guy who took Butler to 2 NCAA finals. I think is one of the top coaches in the NBA. So there's nothing in his basketball resume that suggests to me that he couldn't handle being president of the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, oh, no, definitely. I'm not doubting that he could do that. It's essentially saying that, and I mean, I guess it is, that position's more important to winning than the coaches. Are you going to find a better coach than Brad Stevens? Are they finding a better coach than Brad Stevens?
I agree with you. I don't think he's going to find a coach that's, the equal of himself. But we've seen this with a lot of coaches, right? Kind of move into that front office. Bill Parcells comes to mind right away.
Yeah, but he kept
We'll
coaching.
throw your listeners back in time. Well, he stepped into the front office and then came back and stuff like that. We'll go back in time to Vince Lombardi with the Packers, right? He stepped away and then, resurfaced with the Redskins. So, and reading some of the stories out of Boston and the Boston Globe and stuff, it seemed like the past year and a half kind of really wore on Stevens or the last 2 seasons, especially coaching the bubble. And that's a story that I think is going to emerge more and more as we sort of come out of this pandemic on the other side, is the impact that kind of operating under the pandemic circumstances with all the testing and everything that it involved kind of took a toll on a lot of professional athletes and coaches.
Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Follow him at AC Press McGarry, and he'll be back on Friday to recap the Sixers series, hopefully, or preview game number 6. Michael, appreciate it, man.
All right, we'll see you down the road, Mike. Thanks.
And he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Great stuff from McGarry.